All right, now I'm joined by the commish himself, Michael Johnson. All smiles. About 30 days or so to go until less than that, I guess, till the start of Grand Slam track. So, temperature check. How are we feeling? How are we sleeping? Everyone seems busy.
Busy. Two things can be true, Chris. We are busy, but yeah, sleeping good, feeling good, excited. All of those things. It's coming to fruition. Some days I wake up and think, can't wait, and then some days I wake up and think, I can wait. We still got a lot to do between now and then, but all good, feeling really good.
Was the indoor season a bit just like energizing, just seeing that, like, hey, we all talk about like this momentum coming off of the Olympics, and the athletes are certainly bringing it. That 3K at the Millrose Games, like, you get to see two of the racers just battling it out. A world record falls in the process, and it just carried through. Just in general, I feel like all of the athletes have not taken their foot off the gas in the year following an Olympics.
I mean, I have to say, Grand Slam track racers certainly haven't taken their foot off the gas because they are out there, Grant, Cole, Yara, they're out there mixing it up, man, and having a good time with it, which is exactly what we want to see. So yeah, indoor season's been great for track. It's been great as a lead into what we're doing with Grand Slam track coming up with Kingston. Yeah, and look, but as I've always said, the athletes are always doing their part. It's not the athletes. They are not the problem. The problem is there's no platform to, continue to put them out there and put them on that pedestal where not just avid track fans can see them, but also casual fans who saw them. There are a lot of people who didn't know Cole Hawker before Paris Olympics. Now they do, and they like him, and they want to see more of him. So it's great to see him out there, and it's great to have a platform for him to be able to continue to show people what he can do.
Yeah, so I think like this conversation will probably jump around a bit because, like, of course, like, I want to speak to you as just track fan to track fan, but from the commissioner standpoint, like, you've just been wheeling and dealing and handling a lot of bigger things to build out this platform. So we'll touch on a lot of the developments since we last spoke, I guess almost a year ago, I think, at this point, and when we saw you, I guess, like, at the pre-classic last summer. So at the end of the day, we kind of have to just take a step back and remember, like, Grand Slam track is a startup, right? Like, this is year one of this business venture. What are sort of like the expectations or measures of success that you've kind of set out for yourself? Because it's easy to get caught up, and it's so fascinating to hear like the outside chatter of like, well, how are they going to make money, and like, what's the business model? And you've learned probably from business dealings and companies in the past of just what it takes, and this expectation of being profitable in year one is a little bit just kind of like misconstrued. Like, how do you approach sort of like the business side of coming out in year one and measuring success?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. And so, you know, you have to remember also that we've completed a year one already. I've been at this since the fall of 2023 is when I decided I'm going to launch a new league. The first thing I had to do was go and get money. And that's not easy. I've raised money for startups before. It's never easy. And you have to go out there and convince investors to part with their money to allow you to do this. And they have to believe in the business model. And so to your point about, not profitable in year one, I've started companies and I've made them successful and I've sold them, right? Not a single one of them was profitable in year one. And so no investor is going to invest in you if you tell them, "Hey, I'm going to be profitable in year one." They're going to run away as fast as possible because they know that's just not possible, right? So, the first step was raising money, raising the funds, which I did. The next step, once we did that, was then the biggest challenge. I knew that we were always going to have the two biggest challenges with this league: getting athletes on board to approach their sport in a different way. Where one of the things that we forget is that we think about track athletes as undervalued, and they are, and marginalized, and in many ways they are. Again, two things can be true. Those things are true, but what is also true, the athletes in this sport enjoy more freedom to compete and do whatever they want, whenever they want, than any other sport. They don't have to abide by any sort of schedule. They can sign up to a meet. They can decide, well, I'm not going to run that meet anymore because it just doesn't work in my schedule or my training, or I just don't feel like going there anymore. And there's really very little, if any, penalty to that. So they enjoy a lot of freedom. So convincing the athletes that, hey, sign up in advance to compete against your major rivals 4 times a year. We convinced them last year in 2023 to do this in the spring, summer of 2024. And they said yes. So that was always going to be a challenge. So that was a huge hurdle to overcome and a huge measure of success there. It is also what allowed me to go and then clear the next big hurdle, which was going to television broadcasters and saying, one, put this on TV. Two, pay us, and that's not easy to do, regardless of what people might think. It's very difficult to do. And I'm very happy that we were able to go out and get what I wanted was TV broadcast deals that would allow the avid fan who's been working really, really hard to find and support this sport, make it easier for them with consistent times to watch the sport, to watch our races, and to be able to find it easily and access it easily, but also to be in places where the casual fan, again, who watched Cole Hawker in Paris, but now doesn't know where to find him, they're watching NASCAR on CW. As soon as NASCAR goes off, we're coming right up behind it. So they're going to be able to watch it. So on Peacock, which has NBA and all these other sports, we're there. Now we're on Eurosport. We're on TNT in the UK, where all of these other sports are.
Yeah, so the way sports fans have consumed, and found like how to watch things is so different than when it was like in years past, where you can just stumble upon something and kind of be captivated. Now, with all of the different options that people have, like it's more intentional. I think about just sort of even with the CW and like how they broadcast like the Live Golf, series for quite some time now. And like the biggest thing that people measured it up was just sort of like the ratings. The ratings weren't all that great. But I think like, is there another arm of success that you can look at where it's sort of like, okay, whatever the ratings are, if to begin with, will be what they are. We're year one sort of product. But then from there, I think like it's already a success in the sense that it's accessible to so many people. And like many times that's the first barrier to clear. So you're putting it in a place that people can get to fairly easily.
Yeah, and you make a great point there, Chris. So what I was sort of alluding to earlier is not that we certainly haven't taken our foot off the gas and we can't, but we have already accomplished a great deal of success by getting 48 athletes who represent more than 50% of the relevant medals from Paris in the track events to sign up to compete in this league and commit to it when they've never done that before. That's a huge success. Then being able to go out, to your point, and get, our new product on these networks. I mean, no other emerging sports property can say that they got a major streamer like Peacock and a linear free-to-air broadcaster like CW to agree to allow us to have our new product on both of those networks simultaneously live. So that's a huge success for us. So, that is what we've been working on over the last year. These are things that have never been done in the sport of track before, so we're really excited about that. So we've succeeded from there. But yes, in year one, what are we looking for now? We're looking for growth. We're looking for growth in the numbers of people who are watching, on CW, on Peacock. We have 2 recaps on NBC broadcast. That'll be happening. And the same thing in Europe and the rest of the world. We'll be in over 100 countries here by the end of before we launch and have our first event in Kingston. In all of those areas, we'll be looking at growth. That's what you look for successful businesses. That's what investors look for. That's what partners look for. They look for growth. We'll be looking for growth in terms of attendance as well. Yeah, and on day one, we're not going to have, full stadiums bursting through the gills. That's not going to happen. We're going to have to work really hard to continue to grow and build that. The same thing with viewership. We're not going to have, NBA, type numbers, or even Olympic type numbers in year one in our first events. We're going to be looking for growth, and that's how you sustain a business, and that's how you continue to grow.
What were some of the things that stood out to you just sort of hearing from the athletes who wanted to be part of the league as the things that were important to them. Like I think of just sort of, just this morning, Rye and Noah put out this podcast and they explained just sort of like some of their hesitations at first. And, it was waiting on this broadcast deal to finally get announced. And, other people just wanted to be seen. Like what, I guess, were some of the things that stood out to you that you feel like have been addressed now and alleviated when it comes to just, now we're out there. The roster of racers is done, but what do you remember kind of in those conversations with athletes?
Yeah, I remember, look, I think Sydney is the greatest example. I mean, look, here was the knock on Sydney. She doesn't race enough. She doesn't like to race, and that upsets us as fans. And people still say that, like I even have people saying she was the wrong person to go get. Oh, so I should go get the person that actually always runs and runs every single race to prove that, that makes no sense. Sydney is the greatest example. When I went to Sydney and said, hey, why don't you run more often? She said, I want to, but I want it to mean something. It's the same argument Noah's making, and I get it. And it's the same argument I was making when I was competing. I want the races to mean something. I want to compete against my rivals. I want to put on a show. I want to show my fans why I am the greatest, but I want people to be watching. So yes, it's not just television, it's marketing. It is putting our athletes out there on the stage where the world can see them, whether it's, in the track meets when they're competing, or whether it's things outside of that, where that brings exposure to them, brings exposure to us, and brings exposure to the sport. So, she understood that that's what we were doing, that's what we're building with this league, and joined. And many others joined right behind that because they get it. They've been, hoping and wishing for this, for quite some time. And so when we build it, they come. And that's the other thing. It's just like that we talked about with television and everything else. Are all of the athletes going to come in year one? Come on. No, all the athletes aren't going to come in year one. And you can over-index and get hyper-focused on who's not here, which in my opinion is somewhat disrespectful to the 48 who are here, because they are great. They are Olympic champions. They're Olympic silver and bronze medalists. They are Olympic finalists. They're world champions. This has never happened in the sport. So, by and large, people are excited because they know that they get to see the best in the world. By and large, our fans are out there excited. They've talked about what they're wanting to see and who they think is going to, win these slams. And that's what you want. People even the fans got into, when we started announcing challenges, like, oh, it should be this challenger. It should be that person. Oh, I think this person, and that was a lot of fun. That's exactly what we want. So things are happening the way we want them to happen. Surely we'll address, some of the things that, some fans, some, athletes, some of our sponsors, some of our investors, some of our stakeholders, they'll have questions, like, hey, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? And we'll answer those. But, one thing that I'm proud of, if you go back and you look at, from the day that it was announced almost a year ago now that I'd actually raised the money and we're going to do this, there were all sorts of questions. And there continue to be questions all the way up until last week. Well, who's your European broadcaster going to be? Are you going to be on broadcast? Every question we've been able to answer eventually with something that the fans and athletes are overwhelmingly, happy with.
So as the commissioner, and you brought up the challengers, I know you love all 48 of your racers equally, but the challengers element has been really fun to see unfold over the last couple of weeks. And you just responded, I think, the other day to like a tweet from Colin Waitsman about like the WWE and like playing up storylines. And so do you foresee just sort of, this challengers versus racers storyline, not necessarily good versus evil, but something that the league leans into?
Ultimately, where we're going to be, and we're getting there, it takes time, but our racers are, even right now, to some degree this is true, our racers are in the privileged spot. They have a guaranteed lane. And this is what some of them told me, like, no brainer. I get a guaranteed lane to compete for $100,000 for first place and $10,000 at worst for eighth place, and you're going to pay me, guarantee me. Yeah, I'm there. So they're in the privileged space. They're racers and they got to race, and there are challengers that have come in. And if the challengers beat you, and they could, because ultimately we get to a point where the challengers, want to be racers, all of them. I mean, we have challengers right now who want to be racers. Now, look, this year we have some challengers who said from the very beginning, hey, you know what, this year, I've already got my schedule planned. I've already got, planned what I want to do. I'm not going to be able to be a racer and commit to all four this year, but can I be a challenger and compete in one or two? Sure, this year, but next year, they're going to be a racer, most likely. Somebody's got to go, So, it's exciting, it's fun, and there's storylines there, And look, at the end of the day, this is sport. Everybody can't win, and that's why fans get so excited because everybody can't be the winner, And in this case, we've got 4 slots open in every group for racers, and we have more people who want those 4 spots than we have spots, which means that, yeah, there's going to be some moving around. And if you want to protect your spot and you're in that privileged space as a racer, you got to run fast. Challengers, if you want to be a racer, you got to run fast. We even have competition now, like I said, about challengers. Like, how do I become a challenger? Well, run fast, right? And you get a lane.
Yeah. It seems like Brendan Norwood is showing up to the first one, at least like in a ski mask. He's ready to take people's money, and like I'm here for it because he's leaning into the whole entire role. So to the point of like the WWE, which has been brought up, like looking at the team behind the scenes at Grand Slam, like you guys have hired people from that area and from other sports. So removing sort of like the track heads in the, behind the scenes at Grand Slam, what did you sort of take away from like their assessment of the state of track? Because it's been funny, getting to know, Duncan Boone, the social media guy for Grand Slam, and he was at Millrose Games, and there was this moment where just sort of like he's standing nearby and like he's like, why do people say this sport is boring? And like it's so exciting. He got caught up in the excitement, and it's been cool to see him just kind of immerse himself. But like from the standpoint of people coming from WWE and like all these other different sports, like what did they think when they first came into just the opportunity and the state of where things were at now?
So yes, we got quite a few folks from WWE. We got Duncan came up. He's been working in NFL and in tennis for quite some time. We've got folks from One Championship, MMA, and we got other folks from the NFL. And it's been interesting, they come into this and they're like, oh my God, this is just a greenfield of opportunity with this sport, because they're looking at it not from the same way that we look at it. They haven't been embedded in the sport, for all of this time. And they just see that it's amazing that this hasn't existed before, and they can't understand why. And then they can't believe, when I explain to them and I show them the opportunity, which is the same with our investors, when I show them the opportunity that exists as a result of a lot of the things that are wrong with the sport, they just can't believe it. And they think we have so many unfair advantages to be able to go out. And again, and we do. And that's why we've been able to go out there again and, get these unprecedented broadcast deals. It's why we, didn't have a problem finding investors. That's why we haven't had a problem finding sponsors, because it's just such an amazing opportunity. So they're pretty impressed. Once they get in it and start working in it, they start to see, a lot of what we see, and they come though with amazing ideas that they brought from other sports. They question things. It's funny you say the track heads, because we have a group within Grand Slam Track. So Morlakea Kennison, Kyle Merber, myself, Jill Still, and Jess, and Jessica Gabriel. We're the track heads. So we're the track heads, and everybody else doesn't have a track background. So they call us the track heads. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting, very fun debates that we have um, with the track heads, and you know, it's interesting. I have been involved in so many other sports. You know, my first involvement in the professional sports outside of track was even when I was competing. My partners and I bought the Dallas Mavericks, so I was, you know, involved with the NBA way back in the '90s as a team owner, and so I've always had the opportunity to sort of step outside of the sport and see how other sports operate and see track as an entertainment product as opposed to just track our sport, right? So I can kind of sit on both sides with the track kids sometimes and with the non-endemics, you know, over there sometimes. And it's a very interesting debate. But you know, early on, from the very beginning, when we were first just developing the concept, I had folks from WWE, Formula One, NFL, and from many different sports, you know, and yeah, some of the things that they questioned a lot of the different things that we do in the sport, and that I even, as much as liberal as I am about, you know, changing things in the sport, that I didn't even think about, yeah, why do we do this or why can't we do that?
Yeah, because I feel like we're chatting just a couple days off of it. And I know you liked it. The CITIUS MAG stupid graphic was finally unveiled when it came to just wave light
Brilliant.
at a championship, and there's now all this chatter about it, but it does feel like some of the establishment, like within quotes of the Diamond League, and this is me saying it, not you. Like just gets in its own way of now leaning so far into like the record chasing, and even the athletes are being a bit more vocal outside of even the racers that you guys have contracted, because they were out there openly speaking about the importance of racing versus chasing times. But it does feel like you guys have a clear lane now to just be like the place that is as closely reflective to what the product people see at the Olympics and World Championships, whereas everywhere else is just, world record attempt after world record attempt.
Yeah, and I think just to highlight how far that has gone, sometimes it's not even world record attempt. And at least on the other side of it, a lot of times after the race is over, whatever has been, if there was any record, facility record, meet record, area record, it's even gotten to personal best now. That is now something to highlight and to say, hey, this was amazing. And I just think that, and I tweeted this not too long ago, I think that it has just gotten to a point where we've just taken the racing out of racing. We've taken the sport and turned it into something else. Track is about racing. You have 8 athletes on the track for a reason. You award a champion or you award a winner of the race for a reason, because they outperformed everyone else. And that's not easy. And that's where that's one of my fears, is that, people will start to think that it's easy, I mean, because the winner is not really being highlighted for having won. They're being highlighted for having run a personal best. So ultimately, if you're not careful, you end up with this deconstructed competition where it's not about the athletes in the race. It's about, hey, that athlete won today, and let's compare his time with another athlete in the same event who ran in another competition over here somewhere. That's not what sport is, not for fans. So yeah, we're very excited about what we're bringing. I mean, think about this, Chris. I mean, in our first slam, this short distance, you got the podium comparison to 1500. You got first, second, and fourth in the 800 meters. And those guys got to go run the 800 and 1500 all. And now they got to score enough points across both of those events to win. That is going to be fire, fire, fire. No doubt about it. And then you come back, you think about short hurdles. You got, 4 of the top hurdlers in the world. We're bringing more in as challengers. And they all think that they're the fastest over the flat 100. You can't tell any one of them that they're not the fastest. If I've talked to all of them, they all go, I'm going to win the flat 100. It's like, I can't wait, right? I mean, that's what you want. I mean, it's like one of the things that's funny to me is when I see people, in the track world on social media talking about fantasy matchups, and like, we have the real fantasy over here. It's real. It's not fantasy. It's actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, one of the things that I feel like has cooled off, right? Like you guys come out of the gates, explain the format, and people clung on to the fact. I was like, well, I'm like, I don't want to see Josh Kerr run an 800 and Masai Russell run a flat 100. But now I guess like once the challengers have been inserted and people have gotten this understanding of just how the league works, now it does seem like people are much more interested. Are you feeling that too?
I was feeling it from the very beginning because here's the thing: the people who, if you just look at social media, you post something on Twitter, right, or whatever. The people who like it, what are they going to do? They're just going to like it. It's going to hit the like button. The people who don't like it, what are they going to do? They're going to comment, right?
Yeah,
So
it's true.
there's
That's how it
way
works.
more
Yeah.
likes than there's way more likes than comments. The people that I talk to, when I talk to them, fans, they're like, "This is amazing. This is great. It's exactly what we want." You know, and look, a lot of them aren't compelled to go out and say, "Oh, this is amazing." They're just like marking their calendar, like, can't wait to watch that, and that's all they're doing, and they're going to tune in and watch. The people who maybe don't like it are the ones who are going to come on and comment and be very vocal about what they don't like and how they don't like it, and that's fine. They're going to watch. And that's all we need, and I think they're going to love it. And, but overwhelmingly, the point is overwhelmingly, people are excited about this and people do want to see, Josh Kerr run the 800, because Josh wants to run the 800 and because Josh is saying, hey, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do well. People who love Josh want to see him do well and vice versa. So yeah, it's exciting. I'm feeling it, but yes, even more as we get closer to it, and now the athletes are starting to talk, and we've started to put out a lot of content that which we need to do, and that's our job as promote. That's our job is to promote these races and promote it and help people understand why they should watch and why it's exciting, and they're seeing that, and that's we're doing our job, and we have to continue. But ultimately, when the athletes line up and they start competing, that's when, everybody gets the payoff and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, so it's been since last June when the format like and everything gets kind of unveiled. Very few sort of like changes in general to things. I know like maybe there might be some changes in year 2, year 3, but for the most part, everything's kind of stayed put, right?
Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time. I mean, we spent from sort of the entire fall and the first couple of months for fall of 23, first couple of months of 24, building out the concept. And had all sorts. I mean, we spent, you know, days in whiteboard sessions, just, going through different concepts and what would work, what wouldn't work. We did a lot of fan research with avid fans, casual fans, talking to people who watch track during the Olympics but don't watch it otherwise, and not just asking people why they do watch, asking people why they don't watch, and got a lot of information that helped us to understand how to build this best. Contrary to what people might think, this isn't me just sitting here, like, coming up with something that I think I like or that I think is going to work. That's not how it works. Kyle and I had a very interesting conversation when he first came on and joined, and I explained to him that, it's easy, when we're track fans just, sitting in a bar after a track and we talk about what we would do if we controlled the sport. you know,
We did. Me and Kyle used to do that all the time. We still
Oh
do.
yeah, we all do. We all do, right? But once you get in a position where you actually are in position to make some of these changes and bring some of this truly, to fruition, then it's very different, and you have to be a lot more thoughtful about it. And it's not just your opinion; you have to go out and understand what fans want and what's going to. You're building a product, and you have to understand what fans will actually buy in large mass. It's not about one or two, fans who are very vocal in support of what you're doing and going, okay, my small, sample size over here says that, I'm on the right track. You have to listen to the voices who are saying, no, I don't want that, or I would not watch that. You have to understand why, and you got to build around that. And that's what we did. And I think that's why we haven't had a lot of changes. But yes, there will be changes because we're going to have to continue to listen And of course, once we get into the season, we'll be learning and we'll see things that are working and things that aren't working.
Yeah, so that pool of fans and consumers, like I just remember yesterday, like this press release goes out from the New York City Marathon saying like they had 200,000 applicants and 2 to 3% of people got accepted to it, and like I know I make a very clear distinction in my head of like what is the running community and what is the track and field community. But from your standpoint, like, and this is also the same battle every shoe company has been trying to, hey, we want to bridge that gap between the people who are the
Yeah.
5 hour marathoners in the front of the race and pay attention and learn the names of those athletes at the front. And it's been a losing battle for like, since it started. But is that a relevant data point of like that you assess of just sort of like the demand that there is for running versus, track and there's no better time to be in the sport because they're somewhat sort of connected, but do you also have that distinction, or when you see something like that, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that I've spent a lot of time on. Our team spent a lot of time on initially, just trying to figure out, is that a market for us? Can we, is that part of, one of the things that when you're, this kind of borrowed from the tech world, but TAM, total addressable market, is a very important metric to understand. That tells you how many people you could potentially sell to. So you have to understand that number when you're building a product. You could argue that the TAM for track, the total addressable market for track, is 2.5 billion people, because 2.5 billion people around the world either run, watch track, or register an interest in those two things. Realistically, it's more important to focus on first the 350 million people who watch one track meet a year and the 155 million people who watch two track meets a year, despite how hard it is to watch this sport, right? That's a more realistic number. So we start with that number and try to make sure we can get all of those people in. That's the first thing, because you can't do all things, which is one of the problems that a lot of companies, startups try to do too many things. We need to just do that. But I'm still looking at this 2.5 billion number over here and thinking, if I can figure out a way to go get 10% of them, you know, 5% of them even, that's a huge win, because that's a huge number. So you're right, the running market, but that is mass participation. That's participation. It's not necessary. It doesn't automatically transition into or translate into viewership. So, you have to be very creative. Where I think a lot of people have made the mistake with that is that they have assumed that automatically translates, and it doesn't. It doesn't automatically translate. People run for many different reasons. A lot for fitness, a lot because it's just, they enjoy it. It's, and they're not looking to be any faster. They're not, and they may not want to watch other people do it. So that's something that we have to try to figure out, how we can potentially bridge that gap, but we don't have to. That's my point about, that 2.5 billion. We don't need them in order for this to be successful. We can focus more importantly on over here on the people who already watch track and give them a better product to watch and get more of them, and then try to pick off some of those other folks.
The other massive bucket, I guess, within just sort of even the track space is, of course, like the high school and college athletes who are actively participating. Now, there is sort of like a line, here where it's sort of like you can't bring in sort of like just based off of just your personal stance and how you've kind of vocalized in the past of just like professionals are professionals and high school and college athletes competing against one another. So it's like, how are you hoping to hit that bucket, because they are already consuming stuff? It just always is so much easier when you do just like, I think the example I saw, it might have been Rye who said it to Quincy Wilson. It's like, you can get a lane anywhere in the world, right? Like, you're the most marketable, track athlete. I don't think Quincy could get into Grand Slam, right? Because he's got to be a professional in that sense. And so that's just sort of another sort of area to unlock. And so how do you view the product catering to that demographic?
Yeah, I think so. I think that high school track kids, college track athletes want to watch professional track. because it's where they want to be. It's the same reason why high school kids watch professional NBA, watch basketball. Professional, high school kids, who are playing tennis and aspiring to be a Grand Slam champion will watch the Grand Slams. You're going to watch those things. So I think that that's a market for us. I think one of the problems with a lot of the talk, that happens again, sort of in a bar or, kind of on a podcast, but does not happen, on a whiteboard session with a bunch of, folks with experience sitting around the room trying to figure out how to make something happen and their job depends on it or their career depends on it, or in this case, your business depends on it, is the automatic assumption is that, hey, we got a fast high school kid right now, Quincy Wilson. So let's build our entire league around the fact that right now we have a high school kid who's really popular and really fast and who's an anomaly. But then we're always got to be looking for another Quincy Wilson, right? But there's only one Quincy Wilson. There aren't going to be a lot of those. There aren't going to be a lot of high school kids that can compete at the professional level. He's the only one. And he's a generational talent. There's not going to be another one probably for another 20, 30 years, maybe 10 years. Still too long for us. The point is that you don't build something based on just what you're seeing today. You build it based on what you know to be true, most likely going forward, which you know based on what you've seen from the past, which is that you don't have high school kids who can compete with professionals on a regular basis. So, yeah, and look, I know that in this sport, as fans, we love our sport and we love the fact that our sport is very different. Where that gets us in trouble a lot of times is when we say, well, we don't need to look to other sports. Well, if we want our sport to be successful and we want our athletes to be compensated the way that those athletes are, if we want to have the sort of fan base and have other people en masse appreciate our sport and our athletes the way they do in those sports, it's incumbent upon us to look at those sports and see what they're doing. So if you look at any other sport, you have a pyramid and you have down here grassroots, very wide base. Then it gets a little smaller up here with high school, then a little bit smaller with NCAA. Let's use basketball as an example. Then you have the G League. And then you have here in this tiny little triangle at the top, small NBA. Everybody down here wants to get there. It's exclusive. Only the best of the best athletes go there. That's why people watch. And that's why they have such big television and commercial deals with sponsors. And that's why the athletes get paid so much. And that's why they have such a big fan base. Because it's exclusive and it's the best of the best. And it's the home of the best of the best. In track, we have all of those same things. Grassroots, high school, NCAA, G League. We have the athletes that belong up here in this tiny pyramid up at the top. But they have to come down here and compete in this broader space with really good athletes who are elite, but they're not all the best of the best. So that's the problem. So when you take that and you just say, okay, this is now open to athletes coming from up, the best of the best. It's also open to athletes coming from down here at the NCAA level, if they're fast enough. It's also open to athletes down here, even in high school, if they're fast enough. Now you've diluted down and you don't have an exclusive league for the best of the best. And it's very, very difficult to create a product in the sports and entertainment world, certainly in the sports world, to go out and say, hey, watch this league or watch this professional league or the professional side of the sport because it has the best of the best. Well, does it? And there's too many of them. So that is the problem. People will say, and I get it in the track world, if they're fast enough, they deserve to be there. That's your argument. Hey, I hear you. But I am hyper-focused on putting this sport up there with other professional sports because it belongs there. I'm focused on getting our athletes up there with the rest of those athletes and giving them a platform to compete and show why they're the best because they belong there. That's what they deserve that. The sport deserves that. The fans who want to see that deserve that. And I'm focused on making sure they get it.
I think I learned from our conversation in Eugene in our backyard that like your quote I think that stood out to me was like, when the moment we remove the word deserves from like our vocabulary, we're in a much better place. Athlete X deserves this, and that's like, well, I think now it's just sort of pro tip for people. If you're ever responding to Michael's tweets, don't use the word deserve. You're just guaranteed to not get a response. Um, so you brought up, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Part of that though, Chris, I would say just part of that is that because the sport has been largely, largely left to the governing bodies to promote and build the sport. Well, governing bodies are responsible for inclusive. They have to be inclusive of everyone, right? They have to serve everyone, inclusive of everyone, and because they have such an outsized influence on the sport, fans and people in the sport have been conditioned to believe that this sport is all about who deserves it. And everyone who dedicates their time and life to this sport deserves to be taken care of. Look, that's why we have the federations, and that's their job, and they're doing that, and they're doing the best they can with that. But to then expect there to also be within that a professional sport, an F1 if you like, a UFC if you like. F1 has 20 teams, there's 20 or 10 teams, two cars, so 2 seats. That's it, 20. There are a lot of people, down in GP2 or the Porsche series, those drivers want to get up to Formula One. It's like, you just got to keep working and hoping you can get there. But they work their tails off to try to get there because everybody wants to be there and only 20 people can. Same thing with any other professional league, right? But we in this sport, we sort of, kind of, because again, governing bodies have this inclusive model, feel like, well, no, everybody should get a little bit. And again, the governing bodies can do that. And I'm hoping that what we're doing with Grand Slam Track is relieving them of some of the responsibility to try to take care of the athletes who are already at the top of the sport, right? Now you don't have to do that anymore. You can focus on, taking care of everyone else. We'll take care of this part.
You brought up, the NBA model, F1 now. Recently, have there been sort of like, and because, this year of Grand Slam Track is pretty much, the model is set. Are there any other innovations or changes in other sports that you've seen recently that you're like, you know what, like that is something that we haven't thought of in track, and maybe it's a implementation we could have in the next couple of years?
I talked to one of the really interesting conversations I had early on was talking to Gerard Piquet, and he has his Kings League, which is a soccer league, and he's got all these content creators, who are broadcasting the games, and they're engaging with their followers, educating them on, the game. I saw a league, I think a League One maybe event where one of the content creators was actually live streaming with a alternate type of stream. It's not the main feed, and they are, he's educating his fans on how this match works. It's a one championship match, MMA match, I think, and they're into it, and they're like, because they follow this content creator. So, that's something that we are actually integrating into our thing as well, into Grand Slam Track, where content creators, gamers, who have all of these followings, huge followings, we found some that love track, and they like, hey, I love this sport. I used to run in high school, but I haven't been following it, and now they got followers like, we compare them with, one of our track legends, to basically, bring a new audience in and help them understand our sport and appreciate our sport, and it's different than the main broadcast, because now you've got, you don't have the commentators, you got, you're this content creator, and you've got, someone who knows track, able to, they've got all of the questions, their followers got questions, why is this, or what is this, or how does this work, how does that work, and you're bringing new fans into the sport. So that's something that, that I'm really excited about. Yeah, and I think, sports broadcasting is changing dramatically. And so looking at, some of what happened with the whole NBA broadcast negotiation, that's a lot of, kind of behind the scenes sausage made, sort of stuff. But
it interests me for sure. Yeah.
I learned a lot from that, and it helped us, go out and get much better broadcast deals just by understanding how the broadcast landscape is changing. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it is things that, again, from the track fan standpoint, and a lot of your listeners, this is not the stuff that's not the sexy stuff. It's not the fun stuff to talk about. But what I'm focused on a lot is the things that help us to be able to reach a broader audience, that helps us to be able to, make it easier for the avid track fan to be able to find this and consume it, and also have a better product to watch as well.
Yeah, so we're still a couple weeks away from, the Kingston Slam broadcast teams will be announced soon, and, personalities and all that stuff being brought. But I guess, like, in general, what could fans expect, of, the actual broadcast that you're particularly excited about? Because I guess, like, you could think of it too, of just sort of like the amount of actual racing is fairly condensed for whatever it might be, 2 hours of a broadcast window, which provides more opportunity probably for storytelling in between. So exactly. What does that sort of look like in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about our broadcast. It's obviously, having been with BBC for the last 22 years as a television pundit, commentator, I've seen it. I've seen how we can broadcast it better. I've seen where we struggle to really storytell. So yeah, so we have 8 races each night of our slams, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so first of all, we have a 30-minute pre-show, that studio show that allows us to be able to just, get you ready, get you into what's coming up tonight, talk about what's happening in the sport even, but primarily obviously focused on Grand Slam track and what's coming up. We have a lot of behind the scenes footage and content from our racers, where they train. You probably saw recently we had a crew down in Arkansas, what we call the Arkansas Six. The 6 of our racers trained together down there in Arkansas. And Shamir was cooking dinner for them and having a great night with all of the girls, talking about this upcoming season and just having a good time. So, but we get footage of the athletes training and bits of behind the scenes content of them talking about, kind of how their season's going, how their preparation's going, that sort of thing. So, we get to incorporate that content into our live broadcast to be able to better storytell. So yeah, first of all, we have the 30-minute studio show, pre-show. Then we get into 2 hours of live racing. And yeah, because of the fact that we don't have anything but racing happening, we're able to build up those races and better storytell, not just stories about athletes and their journeys and that sort of thing. That's one way to storytell. But most important, at the core of the product is the story of each one of the races. So who's in the race? Why is it these 8 people? These 4 racers, why these 4 challengers? And now we get to start talking about, and who has the better chance of winning? Who has a better chance of finishing second? Who has a better chance of finishing third? And so on and so forth. And we have as well the element of, pretty sure Josh is probably going to finish first, second, or third in the 8 in the 15, but what's he going to do in the 8? And is he going to finish high enough, to be able to still pull out a championship, enough points to actually win the short distance? So we get to tell that story. We get to set the lineups, and then we get to let the race run. And then we get to celebrate on the other end instead of having to immediately run off to something else. We get to celebrate on the other side. We also get to wait before we actually interview that athlete after they've crossed the finish line so that they actually can catch their breath. And now we can actually hear what they really want to say, as opposed to, look, it's one of the things I asked on Twitter. I asked my followers, what do you want to see and what do you not want to see us do in our broadcast? One of the main things they said that came up most often: don't go interview the person immediately after they cross the finish line. Because they know what I know. And that is, like, when I was competing, if you pull me off as soon as I finish after a 43-second 400 meters, I'm just going to give you the shortest answers I can so I can go get this lactic acid out of my legs. I'm not going to give you any real insight into how that race went or how I felt or how excited I am for the win or any of those things. I'm just going to give you very quick answers through huffing and puffing, and then try to get away, right? So we won't do that. We'll be able to spend the time to really celebrate that after the race, and then have some analysis after the race as to why it went the way it went. So that is the full story: setting up the race, letting it run, and then celebrating and analyzing it on the other side. And we
And
do
it
that
sounds
8 times every night.
And then it sounds like if that's not enough for people, then they can catch CITIUS MAG live on our channels and all that stuff. We'll be at all of them as well.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
plenty to
Yeah.
consume. Kind of reminded me about like the stat perform deal that you guys just also struck. Kind of setting the table for like a betting partner or something like that. Like I guess what was the strategic play in bringing that into the fold?
Yeah, so really excited about the partnership with Stats. It goes beyond just betting. They're able to provide all sorts of data to our broadcast partners and be able to help fans connect better to the sport and to our events because yeah, track is great for, on the one hand, just its simplicity, but there is a lot of data, and a lot of, sort of numbers to crunch and to help that fan just go deeper and to provide that to our broadcast partners as well so they can provide that to our fans. So that's one thing. But then, yes, the biggest part of it and the most exciting part is you need a perform, a stats partner to be able to structure the data, get the historic data, get that to sports books, develop the relationships with sports books so they will actually create odds and take action on the sport. And we're really excited about that. There's no doubt that, sports betting is here to stay. It's huge. And people have never really, outside of the Olympics, had the opportunity to bet on track because in the past, if you can't guarantee that the athletes are going to be there, then no sportsbook is going to take action on it. They can't. You have to know the athletes are going to be there. And so because we actually can guarantee that athletes are going to be there because they're contractually, obligated and they're committed to it, then we can do that. And so Stats is also our betting integrity partner because that's an important part of this as well to make sure that our athletes are educated on sports betting, but also, they do the sort of mini leagues. They, look for, weird patterns and things like that, which is a very big part of this as well. But we're very excited about it and think that it, will certainly increase engagement in Grand Slam track, but also engagement in the sport. And it's been proven to do that with many other sports as well.
All right, rapid fire to close out. I've got a couple ones for you. First off, what did you and Tyreek Hill talk about?
We talked about racing. He was. I just bumped into him at Super Bowl, and was talked about Grand Slam track as well. Just kind of telling him what we're doing, and talked about off season where he's going to end up next, whether he's going to end up back in Miami, and talked about if he's going to race Noah, and of course. You never know if you're getting the real thing or if it's, WWE hype or what.
Next one, you may have caught the clip of me asking Safan Hassan to do a quadruple at a Grand Slam event. Are you open to the idea?
Come on. Who's not open to the idea? I mean, look, she is certainly somebody I want in Grand Slam track. She's one of my favorite athletes. Because she represents everything that we're about. She loves to race. She's not afraid to go out there and put herself out there. She loves a challenge. So, I mean, like when we first talked about Safan, we were talking about that very thing, like which group or like which one group she's going to want to try to get the short hurdles. I mean, we'll let her do whatever she wants to do, but she probably wants to try to do it all. So. Yeah, she did make her requirements very clear though. And
that's right. You got to break the bank for her a little bit.
Unfortunately, our challengers, it's a $2,000 appearance fee, and you're there for the prize money if you're a challenger. So, but we'll see. I think she's intrigued enough with what we're doing, and we're certainly intrigued enough with her that we're gonna try to get her.
Last question, I guess, is I know you're moving into the commissioner role, but I'm sure you're still like a pundit and analyst. Two athletes, one male, one female, who you think have big underrated value and poised for a breakout year in 2025?
Oh, my female athlete posed for a breakout in 2025, Melissa Jefferson. I think Melissa Jefferson. I know Melissa was not 100% last year when she went over to train in Dennis Mitchell's camp. She had been coming off some injuries and things, and I think she just wasn't near where she's capable of being and still ends up, with a bronze medal in 100 meters. So, and when you talk to her, you just see that there's just this determination. So I'm going to say Melissa Jefferson on the female side. Men's side, breakout year. Um, that's a harder one. Uh,
Caleb Dean?
Caleb's definitely one. I was thinking about him. But I'm gonna say I think Zarnell Hughes is gonna have. He had a great year in 2023, and he was on his way. And then because he figured a lot out in 2023 because he's always had the potential. Had a great year in 2023, ran two PBs, national records, and then got injured last year. So I think there's a lot of young kids on the men's side that could have some great years. But I'm gonna say Zarnell is gonna have a good year.
All right, Michael. Well, you've got a couple more weeks of sleepless nights and hard work, and then get to kind of revel in it in Kingston, Jamaica. Looking forward to it. And as always great catching up.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.